This podcast is made possible by listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's August 1st, 2025. On this day in 1086, the initial results of the Domesday book survey were presented to William the Conqueror. The name of it sounds quite ominous to us now, but it was basically just a sort of census. A complicated census, but the whole point was to take an account of what property there was in England in order to figure out how that property could be taxed. And in fact, the reason the word doomsday sounds so bad to us now is because of the way people talked about that census through the next few centuries. Over time, folks who were unhappy with paying levies voiced their frustration that William had ever come up with the idea of accounting for every last acre of land and the number of animals in every herd of livestock. It set a precedent that some compared to the Last Judgment, when they believed each person's sins would be cataloged in a book for God to review. And the word did originally mean Judgment Day, but little j, little d, the original reason for that name was that it would be the document the king would use on the day that he made his decision, or judgment, of how to tax everyone. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The spirit of the Domesday Book, in some ways, is baked into the modern management process. It's a basic concept from a modern point of view, and one that we use in all kinds of situations. Basically, before you set up a new system or make big changes, take account of what you're working with. Informed decisions have more of a chance of being good decisions, right? So, for example, Metro Nashville is about to do just that with the city's trash. It's called a waste audit, and we haven't had one since 2017. If you really want to see what this kind of thing is all about, the results of that audit are available on the Metro website, and it's exhaustive. The document is nearly 280 pages long. It gets into the nitty-gritty of what Nashvillians are throwing in the trash so that the powers that be can make decisions about how that trash should be handled. And we are at a real inflection point right now when it comes to waste removal. As I've mentioned here a number of times, the main landfill where Nashville and much of Middle Tennessee sends its household garbage is almost full. It's out in Rutherford County, and officials there are working very hard to keep that facility from expanding. But aside from that, Nashville has what's called a zero waste goal. That means we're trying to cut down on stuff thrown in a landfill by 90%. Getting there means reducing the amount of material going into the waste stream in the first place, but it's also about finding more and better ways to recycle or compost. And that's a landscape that's constantly changing. In the last waste audit, newsprint and magazines were two of the top 10 kinds of recyclable materials found in bags of trash that were headed for the landfill. And aside from the question of whether more people are dropping those things in the recycling bin now, the number of physical newspapers and magazines that are even in circulation is dropping exponentially. Surely they won't be found in nearly the same volume during this audit. I mean, they can't be, right? But we won't know that for sure until all of your trash is audited. In just a few minutes, artificial intelligence in the music industry can sound like sci-fi, but one Nashville law professor is the right expert to explain the latest. That's coming up after the newscast.
You've got a lot of things to keep track of. Work schedules, family activities, the ever-growing list of things you need to remember to do. Updating the credit card or banking information for your sustaining membership may have slipped your mind. With just 2 minutes of your time, you can update your payment information and check one more thing off your list. Peace of mind for you, funding for your public radio station. Go online to WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Faith leaders in Nashville are asking Governor Bill Lee to stop the execution of Byron Black. WPLN's Miriam reports that Christians and Muslims across the political spectrum are advocating for clemency.
Several reverends joined with Imam Hamid Abdullah in praying for mercy.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the merciful.
Byron Black, who has an intellectual disability, was convicted of murdering his girlfriend and her daughters in 1989. Since then,
The courts have ruled that executing people with intellectual disabilities violates both Tennessee and the U.S. Constitution.
Black is the second death row inmate scheduled for execution since the state paused the practice over concerns that the drugs used made for a more painful death. Nashville Reverend Davy Tucker says that Black's only hope is clemency from the governor.
Governor Lee has this opportunity. I'm not sure he has the courage. It may be legal, but it ain't right.
The state faces other legal and medical hurdles in Black's case, but his execution is still scheduled for next week. Mariana Bacayao, WPLN News.
One of the medical hurdles is related to Black's heart implant, whether and when to deactivate it so he isn't revived with painful shocks during the execution. Yesterday, the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned a lower court ruling that mandated Black's heart implant be deactivated. His execution is scheduled for Tuesday. A plan to dig a tunnel from downtown Nashville to the airport took another step forward yesterday when the State Building Commission approved a no-cost lease of a state-owned parking lot to the firm spearheading the project, Elon Musk's Boring Company. WPLN's Miriam Knight reports.
The parking lot on Rosa Parks Boulevard will be a staging area for the project and its necessary machinery. But the vote wasn't without vocal opposition from Democratic lawmakers and residents, one of whom, a man named Jack Slagle, says he used to work at Tesla and now fears this project is being done in haste without the proper vetting.
My concern with this project is that first principles, and perhaps most principles, are being ignored here in favor of an open-ended science experiment on my community and an essential piece of South Nashville's infrastructure.
About a dozen people got up to speak in opposition to the project, with concerns ranging from the region's heavy rainfall leading to flooding and the impact on rideshare drivers who rely on airport traffic as income. In the end, Tennessee lawmakers on the committee, all of whom live outside Nashville, voted unanimously to approve the no-cost lease. Miriam Knight, WPLN News.
Well, after that decision from the State Building Commission, Democratic lawmakers sounded the alarm. WPLN's Rose Gilbert has that story.
Senator Heidi Campbell represents part of Nashville. She says that Democrats were blindsided by the tunnel deal.
It's a direct assault on the democratic self-governance of our city. And this is not about bureaucratic convenience. It's about allowing a private billionaire to bypass public processes entirely and to waive rent on terms that were authored in secret.
Campbell accused the state legislature's Republican supermajority of steamrolling local interests for a project that primarily benefits tourists.
And that means no public scrutiny, no competing proposals, and no community input, even though all of Nashville, and this cannot be emphasized enough, all of Nashville bears the risk.
Those risks aren't yet known. But this tunnel is not Elon Musk's first project in Tennessee. Last year, an artificial intelligence company owned by Musk opened a supercomputer facility in Memphis, near a predominantly black neighborhood. That facility is powered by turbines that emit hazardous air pollutants and is currently the subject of a lawsuit from environmental groups and the NAACP.
Long story short, there is a significant human cost to doing business with the richest man in the world.
That's Richard Massey, a community organizer with the Equity Alliance in Shelby County. He pointed out that a similar tunnel project by Musk's Boring Company in Las Vegas has been plagued with permit issues and safety complaints.
Again, we are here not to instill fear or uncertainty, but to give you all a warning before the groundbreaking even takes place.
Similar proposals for tunnels in California and Illinois died after public scrutiny and calls for environmental reviews of the projects. Rose Gilbert, WPLN News.
A leader in the Southern Baptist Convention has resigned. Brent Leatherwood had been the president of the Nashville-based denomination's Ethics Commission. Leatherwood faced increased scrutiny after the SBC's policy arm wrote a letter to President Donald Trump decrying the end of the sanctuary status for churches. A former executive director of the Tennessee Republican Party, Leatherwood has been accused of being too liberal for the job. He was nearly ousted last fall when he commended former President Joe Biden on stepping away from re-election. In his resignation, Leatherwood says that, quote, Jesus Christ reveals a better way to live than the angry, self-absorbed, and cruel model that is so often served up by our modern culture, end quote. He's succeeded by the commission's vice president, Miles Mullins. This week's hot streak has pushed electricity demand to a new summer high. The Tennessee Valley Authority says the highest pull for power this summer was Wednesday at nearly 32,000 megawatts. There have been 3 days this month that topped the highest demand of any day last summer, which itself was a record. TVA notes the region still hasn't hit all-time peaks. Those occurred during the last 2 Januaries during cold spells. Tennessee is about to play host to what could be the largest regular season Major League Baseball crowd on record. And one of the anticipated starting pitchers is a Middle Tennessee native. Chase Burns is expected to be Cincinnati's starter. The Beach High School grad has been making headlines for how many batters he's been striking out, though he's not yet gotten credit for a Major League win. As for game day prep, the finishing touches are coming together inside the racetrack at Bristol Motor Speedway, where the Atlanta Braves and Cincinnati Reds will play ball tomorrow. The Associated Press reports ticket sales have topped 85,000, which beats a record set in 1954. Fans are expected to show up by noon for a festival atmosphere, and we'll also see performances by Tim McGraw and Pitbull. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. AI can be an intimidating subject. There's a constant barrage of news about what's happening with the technology and how it's sure to affect almost everything, music included. For an update, senior music writer Julie Height turned to Vanderbilt University law professor Daniel Gervais. He's come up with a novel way of preparing his students to navigate these new realities.
Gervais told me he left for the south of France after wrapping up his semester at Vanderbilt, which is why we needed to speak over Zoom. What I didn't know was that he's there writing another of the sci-fi novels that he uses to teach his law students.
There really isn't a ton of cases to read, which is what we usually use in law school. So I decided that because a case is just really a story between, 2 or more litigants, I decided why not write the story.
What relevance did this sci-fi have to my inquiries? Turns out one of the central characters is an executive in the Nashville music industry.
So the music industry at that point is almost entirely AI-based. So the book starts at 2035. So we're really not far in the future, just about 10 years from now.
But before we jump a decade ahead, I want to get your take on the present. Of the dozens of lawsuits that have been filed in the U.S. against AI companies, what's drawn your attention so far?
The surprise is not in the number of lawsuits, but it's the fact that the initial indications we have from courts is that they will find that a lot of the training is fair use and therefore beyond the reach of copyright, and that will change the picture. That being said, it's a 5 or 6 year process before the entire array of lawsuits is either settled or ends in an award of damages or a dismissal.
So what are the trends you're seeing in AI litigation more broadly suggest for lawsuits over the use of AI in the music industry?
I think the music industry lawsuits could end up in a different place. There was a report in the national newspaper that mentioned that major labels are actually offering deals to smaller startups in AI, but there are also persistent rumors that some major labels will agree to let their recordings be used for training in exchange for maybe some stock or some position in the AI platforms. My concern there is not that the major labels are getting compensated for the use of their recordings, but it's whether the creators, the songwriters, and the artists will also receive compensation.
When it comes to regulation of AI, it is hard to make sense of where things are headed. The White House pushed for a ban on state regulation in the Big Beautiful Bill, but Congress declined. And before that, Congress took up the No Fakes Act again, which would ban unauthorized use of anyone's vocal likeness, and the Copyright Office issued a report questioning how AI models are trained. Could you place these regulatory efforts in perspective?
The No Fakes Act, take two, so to speak, is not a surprise. Congress has been interested in legislating against certain types of fakes, trying to catch up with previous law, which had two problems. One is it was state law, so the rights that we currently have are state rights, not federal rights. So Congress is trying to make this a federal matter, but also the fact that a voice is central to many artists, and voice was not captured very well by the pre-existing right. The report of the Copyright Office is generally pretty much on point, but there is this one paragraph that made a lot of people jump, I think, in the AI companies. Typically, fair use has been more about one song or one book or one image competing against one previous song or book or image. Machines diluting the marketplace for human created works is not something we'd seen in the case law before.
How do the policies taking shape in the U.S. compare with measures being considered elsewhere, say the European Union?
So the European Union was the first to legislate on what it calls text and data mining. What the European Union did was to say, if you're a not-for-profit research type entity like a university or a library, you can do training for free without asking for permission. If you're anybody else, you can train unless the people who own the copyright basically told you not to use the material. It's called an opt-out.
I've mostly seen musicians advocating for protections against AI. It really does seem like the lines are drawn between tech companies and creators and rights holders. How do you see the stakes for each side?
Your description is largely accurate to say that there are these two camps. People say AI will replace jobs. That's clear. But then they say it's like the horse and buggy was replaced by automobiles, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, automobiles are better and faster. But the point that creators are making is that they contribute to human progress in a way that really no one else does in terms of producing new ideas. And if that is no longer produced by humans in the future because the marketplace has been occupied, so to speak, by the machines, their point is that is an existential threat.
That was Vanderbilt law professor Daniel Gervais talking with Julie Height about the latest impacts of AI on music. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.